world-renowned criminal defense attorney, Neil Rockind.
This is Neil Rockind, and this is our podcast, Killer Cross-Examination, where we talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, a subject that I love, a subject that is invaluable to the legal system and the ability to not to get at the truth, but to protect the rights of people who are put on trial, people whose lives are in jeopardy. And that's cross-examination. And I love cross-examination. Cross-examination is what this podcast is about, not just necessarily in the courtroom, but discussing and approaching and evaluating how there are subjects that need to be exposed, and that cross-examination, killer cross-examination, can literally expose the truth. It can peel back the layers and either get to the truth or expose the fact that the people that are telling you certain things, either in the courtroom or in public, are lying or are untrustworthy. And what this podcast is devoted to is killer cross-examination, the sort that destroys witnesses. And if you have a love for cross-examination or the ability to actually break down a subject or tear a subject apart piece by piece to either get at the truth or to prove that whatever someone is telling you is untrue, then this podcast is for you. One of the things that I see and that we're currently experiencing and we're witnessing is the power of the police, the power of the police state. And one of the reasons why cross-examination is so valuable is that because in all of our criminal cases, in all of the cases in which people are accused of crimes, there are police officers who take the stand and who raise their right hand and who swear that what they are saying in court or about to say in court is the truth. And there's so many people in public, so many members of the jury, so many members of our jury panel that just are willing to eat every spoonful, every single spoonful given to them by police and law enforcement witnesses, whether they're police officers or police experts or law enforcement experts. I can't tell you the number of times that I see or I've seen juries just soak up what the officers have to say. And I think part of this are what we're currently witnessing, and that is that there's a public backlash, a righteous indignation, a backlash against what we're seeing in some of the civil rights abuses that we're witnessing day in and day out, or that we're watching people protesting about. Can go back to the fact that there's extreme power not only by the police officers on the street, but prosecutors in many jurisdictions, some courts, and many members of the public on the jury have empowered police officers and police witnesses. I don't know if many of you are aware of it, but there's actually a jury instruction, something that in the law that when juries are impaneled and the jurors sit there and they're impaneled and one by one we go through the process of jury selection. The judge actually gives something called jury instructions and tells the jurors that you're going to hear testimony or you've heard testimony of a police witness or a witness who is a police officer. You're not to give that testimony any more weight than you would any other witness. I want you to think about that for a second. We literally have a judge. We have judges who are telling jurors that the law is that they can't give any more weight to a police officer's testimony than to yours or mine. Think about that. How democratic is that? How incredible is it that our law actually says that even though a police officer comes to court in his uniform or with his his lapel pin or her uniform or her lapel pin, and they're a member of law enforcement, I want you to think about the fact that they're still told, the jurors are still told that the law is that they can't give any more weight to police officer testimony. And do you know what my opinion is if most people hear that? They can't comprehend it. They can hear the words, but they don't believe it. They don't apply it. Because when I actually ask jurors during jury selection, I say, do you believe that? Are you pro-police? Most jurors will say yes. Are you going to give a police officer's testimony more weight? And I say, be brutally honest with me. Just look me in the eye and tell me the truth. I understand. And I give them an out. And I tell them that I know that there are people out there. There are many members of the public who are going to give police officer testimony more weight. And I'm asking you, where are you? Are you someone who shares that view? And if you are, I understand, I tell the jurors. And I do understand, not because I agree with that, and I disagree with that, but I want to know how those jurors feel. And does it shock you to hear that almost all hands go up? Almost all hands are raised by members of the jury? When I talk to them heart to heart and ask them to tell me truthfully, honestly, do you believe that a police officer's testimony should be given more weight? And most will say yes. What does that tell you about where we're at? And if it's hard for people to imagine or to understand what that means that most jurors begin a trial with a feeling, an opinion. And I'm not being critical of that. I'm just pointing this out. They begin the trial with the opinion or an opinion that contradicts or is inconsistent with the law is. The law says that police witnesses are to be treated no differently than you or me. And if that's hard for you to imagine, I want you to imagine, or go back to that point in time where you were stopped by a police officer and given a traffic ticket. Now, of course, there are times where you know it was totally deserved and totally justified. You were speeding, or you were late to work, or didn't have your seatbelt on, or you were on your phone, or you were engaged in some kind of distracted driving, or you didn't use a turn signal, or you went through a red light because you were hustling. And there are a multitude of times where, of course, you did the exact civil infraction or traffic infraction that the officer said you did, and you know it. But there are times, and I know you can think of them, and you can imagine them. Either you've experienced them or your friends have experienced them, where they've shared with you and they've said, you know, I got a bullshit ticket today. I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't doing this. This is bullshit. And you're thinking to yourself, you know, I should go to court and fight this ticket. And you tell some friend of yours, you say, hey, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to fight this ticket. I'm going to go tell the judge or the magistrate that this is wrong. And your friend looks at you and thinks, they're never going to believe you. Or you think to yourself, they're never going to believe me. They're just going to believe the police officer. They're going to believe the cop. They're not going to believe me. I can't. They're never going to choose me and my word, even though my word should be as good as his or hers. They're never going to believe me. And so a lot of times, even though you didn't do anything wrong in that traffic ticket case, you'll go in and you'll try to work it out because you think you can't win, because you think that your testimony can't be or won't be accepted or believed more than the police officers. And if that's happened to you, then I hope the next time that you are brought in for jury duty that you'll think about this conversation that I'm having with you right now. Because if this conversation actually makes an impact, or we actually begin to enter into the courtrooms with the idea that the police officers who testify, that there are some who testify truthfully and some who don't, some who testify accurately and some who don't, some who deserve to be believed and some who don't, maybe, just maybe, we would see more respect for civil rights. Maybe we wouldn't be seeing some of the current event issues. Maybe if it was made clear that you don't get a free pass when you come into court, officer, we aren't just going to immediately accept whatever it is that you say. We're going to hold you to the same standard that we each get held in our homes, when we talk to in our workplaces, when we talk to our fellow coworkers or our bosses. And I'm not going to treat you, and you're not going to be treated any better, officer, when you take the witness stand. And what does that mean? How much more justice would we actually see in the courtroom if that were true, if that were applied honestly? Well, let me tell you. One of the things that killer cross-examination is about not just getting to the truth, but it's exposing the people who aren't worthy of being believed. It is about taking a story, about watching a witness, taking what the witness says and peeling back the layers. And I want you to imagine, because I've seen it. Police officer comes to court and he testifies. He writes a report and he comes to court and he testifies, and he contradicts his testimony, is inconsistent and contradicts what he said in his report. And I begin to cross-examine the officer, and I begin to probe, and I say, well, you're saying this today, and you're under oath, and here's what you're saying here today, yet you wrote this report. And I set it all up. I set it up with your report, of course, was accurate, and you know how to prepare a police report, and you know how to prepare an accurate report, and it's your job to prepare an accurate, complete report. And of course, that's what you did in this case, and you wouldn't have submitted it if it weren't true, right? And he says, yes, 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 yes. Well, today you said X, and in your report you wrote Y. And officers will time and time and time again try to dance or dodge. Not all, but they'll try to dance or dodge and move and evade. And we'll probe further. My cross-examinations will probe further. We'll point out that there was a videotape, either squad car video or body cam video or video from the scene. Say, well, you said this in today, and we've got this video. And watch this video, officer, and you hit play, and the video shows something totally different from what he testified to and different from what's in his report. And he throws his hands up and says, well, it was just, an honest mistake. And we catch officers in good cross-examination, in contradiction after contradiction, some blatant. And you know what? Despite the jury instruction, despite the judge looking the jurors in the eye and saying you're not to give that officer's testimony any more weight than your testimony or mine, than the average person, prosecutors will get up there and say, yeah, well, why would the officer lie? He has no reason to lie. These are just, everything was done in good faith. These are just honest mistakes. These are just honest errors. These aren't critical. It's just human. This is just smoke and mirrors by a clever, good defense lawyer like Mr. Rockind. And believe it or not, despite the jury instruction and despite the contradiction after contradiction, some blatant, we actually see jurors willing to look the other way, willing to accept testimony that was contradicted, that was proven to be inconsistent, that changed, that there were holes and gaps. And the more that happens, the more that officers come to court and are not held accountable for contradictions and inconsistencies, either because lawyers don't pull them out, don't point them out, as I attempt to do in each of my cross-examinations, and as I try to teach lawyers to do in my discussions about cross-examination. It empowers, excuses and empowers that officer to come to court again and do the same thing, rather than teach the officer to actually be faithful and truthful to the facts, to admit that I was wrong, or I lied, or I was inconsistent, or you're right, you caught me, or you're right, I didn't actually see what I said I saw. It's clear on the video that I was mistaken, rather than actually hold them accountable, which means at the very next time they'd be thinking about it and not maybe make the same mistake, or maybe may put another person in jeopardy over the same contradictions and inconsistencies or lies. Each time a jury says, well, you know, I'm going to, or a prosecutor says, well, it's just a good faith mistake, and a jury gives the police officers a pass by convicting the accused, rather than teach the police officers to do what's right and to be better, it has the opposite effect. I've seen police officers take the stand, and when you ask a question, they're willing to guess. What color was the car? Let's say there's a case involving a car, and I get up and I question the officer, and I say, you testified that on direct examination you're asked a question by the prosecutor, and the prosecutor said, what color was the car? And you said, I think it was blue. I said, the car wasn't blue, right? Well, I think it was blue. Well, do you know? I'm not sure. Well, then why are you guessing? An honest answer to a question to which you don't know the answer is, I don't know. Officer, says the prosecutor, what color was the car? If you don't know, then the honest answer is to say, I don't know. Not to guess, not to speculate. You got a person's life at stake. You're asking jurors, you're asking regular citizens like you or me, you're asking them to make a decision about someone's life. This could be the most important decision that likely will be the most important decision that those jurors are ever going to make and that impacts someone else's life. And they're willing to guess? I think it was blue. What do you mean you think? I'll tell you how I handle that. I handle that by asking the officer just what you and I just talked about. I put it right to him. If you don't know the answer to a question, you don't know, or you don't know something, and you're asked it, the honest answer is, I don't know, right, officer? Yes. If I ask you an algebra problem now, and I start throwing it out there, and you don't know the answer, you're going to say to me, I don't know, right? Correct. When the prosecutor asks you, and I put to him, well, the reason for that is that if you offer an answer and you don't know, that's not true. Your testimony isn't true. The truthful answer would be, I don't know. I'm not sure. Any other answer in which you try to offer a fact would be untrue. It would be a lie. Guessing is lying. If the truthful answer is, I don't know, the officer, then you'll just say, I don't know, right? Yes, but in this case, when the prosecutor put the question to you, what color was the car? You didn't say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, right? Right? You were willing to guess. And as you've already agreed, a guess is not true. Are you willing to guess with his life? Are you asking the jurors, officer, to base a decision on a guess? Do you think that that's appropriate or fair? Isn't the system there? Aren't these cases more important? Isn't my client's life more valuable than a guess? And maybe, just maybe, if the legal system didn't protect the guessing and the speculating and the contradictions that are offered by police witnesses, maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't be experiencing some of the problems that we're seeing or we're experiencing now. There'd be more accountability. And killer cross-examination is designed to bring accountability right into the courtroom. You know, I compare what I've witnessed when a police witness testifies and is challenged or contradicted and exposed. How many times prosecutors will still get up and argue that despite the fact that that witness was absolutely destroyed on cross-examination, and they won't say it that way. They'll say, well, the lawyer was just, he was nitpicking and picking apart the officer's story, and why would the officer say that? And he has no reason to lie. There's no motivation to lie, and Mr. Rockind's just throwing smoke and mirrors. But that creates that era or that aura of invincibility as well. It doesn't teach the officers anything to make those arguments if you're a prosecutor. All it does is teach those witnesses that it's okay. And we can do better. We as a legal system should do better. And I compare that to when a client of mine makes the decision to take the witness stand. And I want you to compare that the police witnesses have been contradicted and proven to have offered testimony time and time again, different, even in the trial, different from what's in their report or different from what's on the videos. And the prosecutors will still argue that, well, they're to be believed. And then you have the defendant, the client, the accused, the citizen takes a stand in his own defense. And imagine how difficult that is, how terrifying that must be to have to face 12, 13, 14 jurors in a case, and to know you're going to have to tell your story in court and hope that the jurors are willing to believe you. And you have to face a cross-examination by a prosecutor who is determined to try to make you, the defendant, look bad. And just imagine all of the pit in your stomach and the nerves and the anxiety that must bring up, to think that your entire life depends on your getting up here in these few minutes or hours of testifying. How scary that has to be, frightening that has to be for those people, for my clients and people who take the stand in their own defense. And you know what happens? The prosecutor catches the person, the accused, in one contradiction, one inconsistency. And you can hear the room, the entire courtroom just gets silent. And you can hear you can see or hear, almost feel the swelling of pride, the pride of the prosecutor welling up in their, you can feel them thinking that they got him. We got him. One contradiction, one inconsistency, and they think that the accused is lying to save his or her own skin. And they'll get up there and they'll tell jurors that this guy got up here, you heard him, and I questioned him, says the prosecutor, and he lied about one thing, or I showed you that his story changed about one thing. And he's just getting up here now and just telling you whatever he has to save his own skin. And think about the message that that sends. The imbalance of it all, where you can have police witnesses whose testimony is different from their reports and different from what's on the video, and they can be called out by lawyers like me. And they're given a pass by the state, they're given a pass by the prosecutors, and even given a pass by jurors. And the lone citizen there is defending himself, takes the stand and is cross-examined and impeached or challenged on one or two facts. Overall, does a pretty good job of telling a story, but on one or two facts. And the prosecution, on behalf of the state, on behalf of the people, get up there and say, he's lying. And believe it or not, despite that jury instruction I told you about, a lot of jurors will agree. We can do better. We have to do better. I know that I've spent a lot of time on this podcast reliving some war stories. And we'll talk more about war stories in upcoming episodes. But this is an important subject. We need more accountability in the legal system. We need more in teaching. We need acquittals. We need police officers, when they take the stand, to be held accountable when their stories and testimony doesn't line up with what they said happened earlier, or with what witnesses say happened, or with what forensic evidence says, or with what the logic of the moment is. And maybe, just maybe, if more lawyers will do what I try to do, if more jurors will really focus in on that jury instruction, we don't give police officers more weight, more credit than you or me, maybe there'll be some more justice in our courtrooms. And maybe, just maybe, that will translate to more justice in our society. Look, I appreciate and thank all of you for joining in. If you enjoy and like this podcast, I hope that you'll subscribe. I hope you'll go to any one of the places where our podcast is broadcast and hit like. Hope you'll like it. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube. I hope you'll subscribe and tell others about it, because what we're going to do in this Killer Cross-Examination podcast is not just talk about war stories and horror stories and about techniques and challenges, but we're going to talk about subjects like this, about how to make things more just. We can do it. We can get there. I'm going to help you get there. This is Neil Rockind, and this is Killer Cross-Examination.